And we are live. Daryl, hello, sir.
Pat, hello indeed. How are you going, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very good. Very, very good. This is a strange new world we're living in, as we were just talking about before off the air, with this whole the ability to be able to talk to each other with such clarity.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah, yeah. Daryl Habraken. Look, I'm just realizing we're live streaming. We're live, and I just got my little notification on my phone saying Department of Conversation is now live, so people can share
Nice.
us. And I'm looking over to my other computer. And I can see us live on YouTube as well. We're going for it. No,
Wicked.
I think it would be great to talk about it actually because one of the
Mm,
things I'm trying to do with the DOC at the moment, a little bit, not a lot, because we typically don't control the conversation. It's like,
mm.
what are they talking about? Netflix has caused American ISPs to throttle back their internet because there's so much usage at the
Yeah.
moment. We don't throttle the
Yeah.
conversation. But we
No.
do want to talk about things other than COVID-19 as well, which I'm sure will be a part of the conversation. But
Yeah.
I think what we were just talking about, especially for someone like yourself, maybe on a more minor note for me, is this
Mm.
technology that's been thrust upon us, which
Yeah.
may end up being the way forward. Because I think that you're in your studio. Is it your studio at home, or have you just set up a temporary setting?
It's my studio now.
Yeah,
It's a temporary setting. This is actually my girlfriend's house,
right.
probably soon to be my house, too, to be fair. Yeah, it's got double glazing and it's just off the road enough. And I thought, well, I'm going to be in isolation with you. Let's set up a little space.
Yep,
Got some of these, what do you call it? But anyway, those soundproofing buffering panels from
yep,
another studio.
yep.
And I managed to get them in before lockdown. And here we are. It's
Yeah,
good. And also, I've also got, because I've got a podcast studio as well, I raided that and brought in my pod mic, and I got a Zoom here, which is I'm using as an audio interface.
yeah.
And to be honest, this is stuff as a voice actor. This is stuff I should have done a long time ago,
Yeah, absolutely.
and this has just it's forced me into having to do it. And yeah, and pretty much, I think this is going to change everything. If we eventually get out of this whole COVID situation, we're not going to be the same as performers, as businesses, as people who communicate. It's just taking it to a new level.
I
We're
think
limited only by bandwidth.
I think for those people who are ahead of the curve with this, you're one of them because you're obviously working already sort of in a digital
Mm.
sense with your podcasting and also with
Yeah,
your voice work. Listen to those dulcet tones coming out.
stop
Um,
it.
and I can see why you've got a girlfriend. Yeah. If you weren't already taken, I would turn. There's no question about that. Um, but
So honest.
I did the same thing. So this is like my second. My studio has got like a dock setup, which is all sort of my A gear, and then we've got
Yeah,
a B setup, which we're just in the process of allowing other people to come in and use. And so some of the stuff
yeah,
I've just put out of the B to bring over here. Including this mic
yeah,
and that sort of thing, but I've moved into my bedroom, which I've said most times, and I got some of the
yeah,
I've got some eggshell sort of foam on the back there, and then in front
yeah.
of
It
me,
looks to be this. Yeah,
I've
hmm,
got a bunch of foam as well. But
yeah,
what I just decided yesterday, my kids will be pleased to hear this. My kids are with their mum at the moment. Is I'm going to convert a portion of downstairs and make it a more permanent space as well. Not because I
mm,
want to move out of my other studio, but because our hands have been forced. I sort of had, and
yeah,
maybe I was being a bit of a wanker about it, but I sort of had an idea that I don't really want to do podcasts over the internet because you lose a little
yeah,
bit of that. I can't have. I mean, we could have a beer, but I much prefer in
yeah,
my studio. I literally have a fridge just here, and I reach over and I
yeah,
pull it open and I pass the person a beer. I like that
yeah,
vibe better. But because the hands have been forced into having to do it over the internet, and perhaps I should have known this all along. It's been fine. I'm going, well,
mm,
actually, this is really useful, and I think that
yeah,
if I do set up a space downstairs without the same sort of investment as my other studio, but a B
yeah,
space, I'm going to do it. I'm actually starting it this afternoon. I'm going to start building a wall and putting some bits up, and
yeah.
I'm like, might as well.
That's good. That's the way to do it. I absolutely may as well. As you said, like it's funny. We've got time and we've been forced. So there are some strange positives that have
Yeah,
come out of the situation.
yeah.
And yeah, it's not going to be the same at all.
Well, we were
At
just
all.
talking about. I can't remember what it was called. The opposition to radio sport for Media Works live sport. It might have been live sport, the radio live version of it. And Ian
Yeah.
Smith, the former cricketer, the cricket commentator, was part of their breakfast team, and he used to dial in every day from Hawke's Bay. Now in the
Yeah.
radio world, you have either a thing called a Comrex, or you actually get a hardwired ISDN, and you've got to have it installed in your house.
Yeah.
But this right
Yeah.
now using this Zoom, literally using this Zoom and taking the audio feed out of the Zoom, you could host a radio show anywhere in the world. You could be a part of a team anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that our not yours and mine, but our being society and on some level the media's hands been forced, and that when this thing is over, I heard a commentator say last night that the world won't go back to normal until we have a vaccine. But when this is over, or at least when this is more manageable, I think the world will never go back to what it was and the way we did things.
No, and I think a lot of it for the positive too. I think the way we do things physically and the way we think mentally, I think all that's going to change. I mean, gone are the days where for a lot of, in the creative world, and that we have meetings. I'd go to DDB or Colenso or whatever for a meeting for some commercial, and you're there for 5 minutes, and it's like, what the fuck am I doing here? I don't need to be here. You know what I mean? And now it's like I can do that from home, and I think a lot of people are going to realize that now. They're going to be more confident with the technology, especially with Zoom. And my God, I wish I got stock with them a few weeks ago.
Yeah, totally.
And there's going to be a lot of that now. We don't need to drive around all the time. We don't need to be at a certain place. I thought back recently about how much driving I actually do in a day, and it is phenomenal how much driving I do from studio to studio, from meeting to meeting, and then everything else in between, which I don't really need to do. I mean, I haven't even really embraced internet shopping yet, and I think I'm going to be doing that pretty hard once this is over. A lot. That's not to say I want to stay at home all the time and be a homebody. That's not how I roll. I mean, I want to go out and socialize. I want to be with people and spend time with people. But when it comes to work and when it comes to productivity, we can definitely do it from the comfort of our own home with a glass of whiskey in hand. I hope you don't mind. I'm just finished painting my house and I'm feeling good about that.
Nice. I remember talking to Leighton Smith about this. He built a house out in South Auckland, in the Clevedon area. I'm assuming a big, beautiful house. I've never been there, but with Leighton, I would expect that to be the case. And when he built it, the whole house was wired to be able to broadcast out of home. Yet he'd come into the ZB studio every day, and he said very clearly he much preferred to be around people. And I think the philosophy, I would follow that philosophy. However, you'd go, I'd much prefer to be around people, but I want the opportunity to be able to do this from home if I want. And I think he does a weekly podcast with ZB, or he probably just does them wherever he likes. And I heard him say on one recently, this is the one from home. So he's obviously still going into ZB to the building to do his regular podcasts, but he's now starting to do it from home. And I think the other thing, and I've said this numerous times, and I've said this over the last few podcasts as well, New Zealand's always been a little bit behind. It's funny, we're ahead in some things, like because we're such a what do you call it, a closed circuit. We've got no countries on our borders. We're a testing ground. So apparently things like FPOS, we were the testing ground for the world, back in the 80s for how that worked, because we were a good sample size and we didn't have the influence of external forces. But I think in other things we're a bit behind, and I think working digitally and how digital things function, for example, podcasting, we're a bit behind. Businesses don't quite understand of the effectiveness of advertising on podcasting versus, paying 10 times the amount on old media sort of thing. And also I wonder if we've had this thing, you can't work from home because you won't be as effective, or you won't be, I won't get as much out of you coming here. I want to be able to watch you as the boss. And I wonder if this is going to give management across New Zealand a relook. I mean, if you had 100 staff, if 20 of them were working from home, then your building can be 20% smaller and 20% cheaper. Straight away, there's other ways to look at this. And I wonder if after this, businesses will be looking at, well, that horrible enforced experiment of people being at home, they actually were as productive. In fact, wasn't it funny? They were more productive, and they got it all done. And maybe we can figure out a different way of doing things as well.
And to be fair, though, that isn't for everybody, as you say, because there's only so much I could do at home without getting distracted, by the YouTube or by the TV or anything like that. So there's definitely merit to going in. And I think, despite what I said before, like being in a creative industry like this, on Friday, we've got permission. I'm doing a radio show at ZB for Easter. And we've been given permission to come together, just, stay within the rules, 2 meters, blah, 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 all this sort of thing, wiping down the microphones like crazy. But we've been given permission to do that, and I can't wait, because I get to be around people. We get to laugh off camera, off mic, and
Yeah.
just chew the fat while we're going along. And there is something about that creativity as a community is a strong thing as well. But once you're recording, once you're on underway, there's no reason why it can't be done from home or from another isolated area.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I know CBA, the guys you're talking about, very, very well. I mean, I did about 15 of those Christmas mornings in a row, me and Phil sitting there doing them. But I wonder now for groups like CBA who bring people
Mm.
together for doing radio specials and stuff, maybe Christmas Day, maybe 3 or 4 of the hosts will be from a different part of the country over
Yeah,
Zoom. Because as long as
yeah,
they've got a good mic on their end, I mean, this sounds as much a radio studio as being in the radio studio. And then, of course,
yeah,
the thing that I've realized, which is like the slap in the head, of course, dickhead, is that once you move to going onto the internet, the world's your oyster for who you can access. So
yes,
for a group
yeah,
putting on a radio show, the world's your oyster for who you can access. And for people like podcasts and stuff, for who you want to access as a guest. So I sent off emails today to a couple of
yeah,
Easter weekend's coming up, so a couple of American sort of people who are involved in the church world, and I'm like, do you want to come on my podcast this weekend? It's Easter, it'll be Saturday for you. Come on Saturday afternoon and have a chat. Because A, they're still locked down over there, well, they're choosing to be locked down,
yeah,
and B,
yeah,
you can,
yeah, yeah.
which is cool.
But they're still locked down on a state by state basis, aren't they? In the States,
I,
they don't
I
know.
I was talking to Steve Wrigley a couple of podcasts ago, and he's based in New York, and he basically went, Pat, do you honestly think that the American government could tell people to stay at home? Do you honestly think that that would be something
Yeah,
that would be accepted? So I
yeah,
think I like here it's law. Here there's been 220 or something, or no, there's been 20 prosecutions and like 220 warnings by the police.
yeah,
So here it's actually, I was going to say martial
yeah,
law. It's the wrong word, but it's been instituted
yeah,
as law.
yeah.
So it hasn't been done like that in America. But I think sensible people are isolating themselves, are staying at home.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It was. How did you find it to begin with? This whole isolation thing. Were you somewhat isolated? Did you start to isolate yourself before it all began? Because we started with my flatmates, my girlfriend now, and all that. We sort of started to stay home a little bit more. Started not to, you know, more sanitizer and all that sort of thing. What was it like for you before we actually had the official level 4?
I went to more sanitizer.
Yeah,
And I was one of those people who a few days before the lockdown was announced went looking for sanitizer and couldn't find any in the world. But I found one company in New Zealand selling 5 litre containers for $270. So I
was that
bought.
a university? Was that a university-based company?
No, it was someone up in New Plymouth, I
Right,
think. But I
right, right.
also knew that there was lots of neighbours and friends who didn't have any as well. So I thought I'll just stump
Yeah,
up and buy it. So I bought it.
yeah,
And then because I was still using my studio. So then I bought a whole
yeah,
lot of little containers from the Wadi Fuddy, filled them
yep,
all up, gave them to neighbours, gave them to friends, gave them to my kid's mum, gave them to people up the hill, put them in the studio. So I kind of used half of it and passed
yeah,
it on. And then I
mm,
found out, because I've got a skin condition, psoriasis. I mean, it's not dramatic, but using the
yeah,
alcoholic rubs, I was getting burnt. So my hands
yeah,
all inflamed up and stuff. So then I bought like 5 boxes of rubber gloves. So
yeah,
I was, the answer to your question was yes and no. I didn't stop really
yeah,
going out and about doing anything. I've got a couple of clients in Dunedin that I still went and saw, and I didn't avoid them. But when
yeah,
I went out, I pulled on some rubber gloves, and I was the only person walking around with gloves on at that stage.
yeah,
Obviously, now if you look, everyone's wearing those gloves.
yeah, yeah,
But I was mostly wearing them because I didn't want to have to go home and then use alcohol hand sanitizer to burn myself.
mm,
So I'd wear the rubber gloves, take them off, throw them out, and then wash my hands really well. So I thought that was a
yeah.
safer way.
Yeah, I went to Pack and Savage the other day, and I put rubber gloves on in public for the first time, and I felt like a dork. But at the
Right.
same time, I felt safe. You know what I mean? It was weird. Still felt like a dick.
It still comes down to
One guy had black gloves. I was like, bro, the man.
it still comes down to practices though, because like with rubber gloves on, you
Yeah,
touch your face, same thing. Do you know Mark
right.
Rober? He's a YouTuber. He's a former NASA engineer, and he now runs a YouTube channel where he puts out one video a month. And his name's Mark
What
Rober.
does he look like? Is that to do with a moustache?
No, what does he look like? Oh shit, I don't know. He's good looking younger. He's probably in his 30s, and he does
Right.
he does really crazy stuff. Like they're all science based experiments, So like he wanted to do a science-based experience on how sound travels. So they build the world's largest air horn and take it out to the desert and see if they can make the sound go like 8 miles. So he kind of into, they did one where they built the world's biggest Nerf gun, they actually did a liquefaction one where they filled the spa pool full of sand. He got his nephews to jump on it, and then he turned on the air underneath and turned it into So that's what he does. He's actually doing 3 videos a week at the moment, 30-minute school classes, which is kind of cool. Right. So for people who are doing school, and he's doing a little science event. But he did one the week that the lockdown happened here about touching your face. And I put it on my Facebook channel. It's a fascinating watch. So the first thing he did was he cleaned a classroom down top to bottom with bleach, and then he used some kind of powder on 5 kids' hands. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, they got the black light out, and they had a look from those 5 kids where the powder was, who it was on, and it basically was on the whole class, and it was everywhere. And then he did another one where he wanted to test handshaking, so he put powder on one kid's hand, got him to shake some. So number 1 shook number 2, number 2 shook number 3, and it went down the line to number 5. It was still there. And then he got number 5 to come to the front, and 5 went to 6, 6 went to, and it survived, I think, until number 9. So one handshake, the powder survived to the 9th person. Yeah. From going one to the other. And then he also he also did one where he actually spent an hour telling himself not to touch his face. So he went, I'm going to do an experiment where I don't touch my face. He put powder on his own hands, and the objective was don't touch your face. And lots of times he stopped himself, and then he went under the black light at the end, and his face was covered. Because even in that hour when he was purposely trying to not do it, there's just times you do this and you're not even thinking about it. So it's Mark Rober, R-O-B-E-R. It's really worth anyone checking out the one on how, I guess, germs or viruses pass between people.
It's funny because I've always been kind of anti hand sanitizer and things because I've always been one of those ones who believes we need germs. You know
of course.
I mean? Like you can't model collie kids. You got to let them get out in the garden and play in the dirt and play in the mud because we have to build immunity. But this is definitely a very different situation, and I'm wondering how are we going to get back? Will we get back to some of those habits? Like I miss shaking hands. I miss hugging, of course, other people and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Is it going to affect us? I think we're either going to go full beam into it and we're going to be hugging and pashing everyone we see, or it's going to be, we're still going to be just holding off for a very long time, kind of like Demolition Man, if you remember that film.
Did you say hugging and pashing everyone we see? Is that what you just literally said that? Right.
Pashing. Are we going to get too far?
So this is why I left. This is why I left Auckland. You crazy Aucklanders, hugging and pashing everyone we see. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Do you know what we're going through at the moment? What we're going through is every country in the world that was colonized by Europeans. Yeah. So white man turns up, brings the flu with them, knocks out 80% of the native people because they'd never experienced that virus before, so they had no defense for it. Basically, that's us right now. There's this virus that we have no defense for. It's not going to kill 80% of the world, but it's going to kill a bunch of people. The way I say that sounds flippant. I'm not meaning it to be. And then we'll build up an immunity to it, and then there'll be a vaccine. But as I said earlier, I've heard experts saying the world can't return to the way it was until there's a vaccine, because I'm lucky enough to be talking to a Washington Post reporter either tomorrow or on Friday, the New Zealander who's just written a post. So there's a New Zealander who's a Washington Post reporter who's based in Beijing. So I'm going to have her on the podcast one of the next 2 days. And she's just written a piece for the New Zealand Post, for the Washington Post, based on what New Zealand's doing. And I think the objective is eradication in New Zealand of COVID-19.
Yes.
And that's amazing. And I guess if you think about this 100 years ago to things like polio and smallpox and that kind of stuff, we did it, but we didn't do it through suppressing it like we're doing now. We did it through vaccines. But so let's say that we eradicated it, but the world was still struggling, I think that we will still be operating in New Zealand with 0 cases. I mean, this is hypothetical. I don't even know if that's possible, but let's just say it is. We will still be operating probably on the no handshake principle and that kind of stuff until because 25% of people apparently have no symptoms at all. So you just don't know. So even if we have 0 cases might still be a couple of hundred people who are showing no signs.
It's been interesting. I've really wanted to actually go in and get tested, even though I feel nothing. I'm no cold, no nothing like that. But I'm just curious: do I have it? Because of that very thing. Am I one of these fortunate people who can contract the virus and show no symptoms whatsoever? If I am, that would, as an experiment, I was just curious about getting it done. But they won't touch you unless you've actually got some sort of flu or cold symptoms.
I would think
makes sense, I guess.
Logic would say to me, I would think that if any of us had it in a, and we weren't showing, someone in our circle then would. Because you're not going to get a bubble of 2, 3, 4, 5 people where everyone immunity doesn't show. Like someone would.
Gotcha.
That's my. I'm not an immunologist, but that's what I would guess. You'd be very, very unique and lucky to have. I don't know. You said you're with your girlfriend. Is it just 2 of you in the house, or is there more?
Just 2 of us.
Okay, so there's 3 of us in my house at the moment. We would be very lucky, let's say, if one of us had it and didn't show any signs, passed it on to the other 2, and they also had no signs. I think that would be not impossible, but improbable. But there is a test that I saw on, it might have been the BBC, in Ireland at the moment, that they haven't sanctioned quite yet, but it can test if you've had it and you never knew. And they're trying to bring that to the market. It needs to go through the right channels, because then obviously if you've had it and you never knew, you're probably safe to get back to work. And I think I was watching One News last night, and they talked about this idea of COVID passports. In other words, if you're safe, you've had it and you're now recovered, you have like in German times, as all the women conspiracy theorists would say, show me your papers. But to say, look, I'm clear, and that's why I'm able to do my non-essential job, or
I've got to call out you. And if you haven't had it, you should have a little gold star on here just to show.
Pink triangle? Is that the one?
Triangle.
Something like that?
That's the one.
But the funny thing about that story, people can look it up, is the reporter who was talking about this invention out of Ireland did the test and came back as he had it. Now, the test was still being, I guess, quantified, tested. But if it's accurate, then there's this weird irony that the reporter, like if it's accurate, that the reporter who was telling the story about the test was someone who was one of the 25% who had it and showed no signs.
Shit.
Crazy, eh?
Mate. Yeah, I'm still genuinely I'd love to take the test and just see, but what's the point now? No point.
No, and I think, I've been out once it's 2 weeks tonight, isn't it? Because we are live. So if you're listening to this in podcast form, then it'll be later. But we're recording this Wednesday afternoon, so midnight tonight.
Do you think we're going to be out in 4 weeks? If eradication's the goal, I can't see it.
I think the odds of us being out in 4 weeks are greater today than they were 3 or 4 days ago, with that trending numbers down. Like the last couple of days, we've had more people recovered than have been diagnosed with it. Now, obviously, if that, who knows if that's an anomaly or it's trend. If that becomes a trend, then that heads towards eradication. But if I was to put my money on it, I'd say if you had asked me a week ago, I would have said it'll be 5 or 6 weeks. I think it'll probably still be 5 weeks. And I think as a nation, it's disappointing to hear people talking about wanting to go to their cribs in batches for Easter because the numbers are so good. It's like that's exactly how it will spring up again. It's like I would rather take a week longer and be inconvenienced than come out after 4 weeks and have it flare up again. You know?
Yeah. I was thinking about that very thing actually when they were doing these, the daily updates and Jacinda comes out, whoever it is that comes out. I was thinking, how are they going to actually handle good news? Handling bad news is easy. Tell us it's shit, and we'll tell you what, But if you come out and give us even the most remotest bit of good news, everyone's just going to go, sweet, party time.
Yeah, it's over.
We'll just flare up again. Yeah, that was something that I thought about the other day, is because the numbers weren't as bad as they could have been. The fact that we've only got 1 death, and is it still 1 death? I think it is too.
As of recording this, there's still one death. Last night on the news, they said there was, I think, something like 14 hospitalised, 4 in intensive care, and 1 critical.
1 intensive.
So,
Okay.
so
Still fairly low comparatively to the other numbers that have been happening up in the world. Yeah.
I don't know what the lag is, because if you look at it, that, I mean, it's more than 1,000. But if you say round figures, 1,000 people and 1 death. I mean, at one stage they were talking about 2, 3, 4%. Is it mobility rate? Is that the right word? Could kill 2, 3, 4% of people who get it.
Mortality.
And I think 1 out of 1,000 is pretty good. But then I also go, but hang on, people who have got it now, we've had sort of a spike, and now we've got to give those people some time, and maybe over the next week or so there'll be a lag. But I'm not saying this like, more deaths, but there'll be a lag to being some more. I mean, gosh, it seems that from what Washington Post was saying today is that the world is now looking to what we've done, and what I guess I want to say Jacinda, but obviously it's a group of people, including some business leaders like Stephen Tyndall, has been credited for pushing the government.
Really?
That if they've, because 2 days could have made the difference. If America is doubling every 3 days at the moment, if we had gone 24 hours later or 48 hours later, that could have been the spike that made it last another 2 weeks. Who knows?
Because we were doubling when they did the announcement going into 3 and then into 4, 24, 48 hours later. We were doubling at that stage, but that was low. We were at 10s and then 20s, and we're in those sorts of numbers, and then that slowed dramatically. Once we got into the 4s, and it's been interesting how almost all of them are due to international travel, and there's only a very, very small case, still a very, very small case of people who actually locally transmitted or.
Well, the last numbers I saw were a few days ago. They said last night 2% are confirmed community transmission, but 3 or 4 days ago they said 1% was confirmed and 17% was unknown. So maybe it's 2% now. I haven't heard the unknown number recently, but let's say it's 2% now and 15% unknown. You're probably realistically looking, I mean, if you just, again, not making a quote, I'm an idiot, I'm the dumbest person in the room, but it wouldn't surprise me if you average those out and you got kind of a 10% community transmission. But even if that was the case, out of 1,000, that's 100 people. That's pretty impressive.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah.
That means we've done the work. I mean, it should be the other way around. It should be 80% transmission through public and 10% that brought it in. You know what I mean? But we've managed to do it right. We've got it on time. We do have the massive geography advantage, though. We are a small island at the bottom of the world, so that's definitely playing to our advantage. Even to Australia, if Aussie was looking bad for a while, but I'm looking at their numbers recently, and per capita, they're not far off what we are. So, if we both, they're blocking off their states now. I've got mates living in Perth, and Western Australia is pretty much an island within an island.
Really?
Yeah.
One of the things about Perth, which is interesting though, is you have to drive such a long way. Like you're basically driving across hundreds of kilometers of desert to get to the next state anyway. So you've probably got a good amount of there's that space thing there. The space thing is interesting though, because you hear about Manhattan and you hear about Italy, and one of the things they constantly say is people live on top of each other. And you asked me right back at the start what I was thinking about when it all started. One of the things I was thinking was how lucky we are. Like I live in Dunedin, so houses are $3.50 down here. So you got to remember that. But I live in what I actually call my West Auckland bunker, because it's a masonry brick building. It's hideous, as ugly as sin, my house. But it's big. It's 6 bedrooms. It's got 2 lounges. There's lots of room. And so the 3 of us who are in here right now, I've got one of them's a boarder, and sometimes I don't see her for 24 hours, like literally, because there's a lounge downstairs, and we've kind of said, Disney Plus, Netflix, we set all that up downstairs as well with a 58-inch screen, and just and I think that she's studying. She's a university student. She's working on her studying. She's doing that, and so we've got physical space even within our buildings. And I was talking to a mate actually involved with your guys, Josh, the other day with your Friday broadcast. And he's living in with his wife and 2 kids under 4 or 4 and under in a like 2-bedroom postage stamp. And I think for that it must be really it must be much more difficult. I was watching a woman before the lockdown happened, but the word had come, this is ramping up, guys. And she was in a fruit and veggie market down here in Dunedin, and she had what was probably a 3 or 4-year-old. And I just felt stressed watching her because all she was doing was trying to get this kid to stop touching shit. And she was just grabbing at the hands and grabbing at the hands and grabbing at the hands. And I'm just like, man, you forget that. Like I've got all mine are double digits and 2 of them are teenagers. But you forget that. And I think to have probably each end of the spectrum, you hear about people in dementia homes who are really at risk. And those little kids who you can't control must be far more stressful living or operating with those people at the moment.
Mate, your mind was just going crazy. You'll be constantly thinking, what are kids doing? What are they touching? And I do feel like, lucky, not lucky. I want kids. I'm 40. I'm almost 41. I want kids. But to not have kids in this situation, I do feel kind of lucky, in a strange kind of way. But I am hearing positive stories, though, like families who are being brought closer together because of this situation. So I think there are a lot of positives out there, too. Those people probably have 10-bedroom houses. But, I understand that in Auckland, young families just can't afford that sort of thing. So it's going to be putting a lot of stress on people. A friend of mine said just how many breakups are there going to be over this period? And, I hated to think it, but I was actually thinking maybe quite a few.
Well, and just think of the logistics of that. If the breakup happened during the 4 weeks, what the fuck do you do?
You're stuck.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine down in Wellington, actually. She works in broadcasting as well, Alice. She broke up with her long-term live-in boyfriend 2 days before the announcement, and now they're stuck in together for this 4 weeks. Poor thing, you poor child. But you know what? Let's get away. Let's get away from that's enough. We can read about this in the paper. One of the good things about COVID is the ability to be stuck indoors watching Netflix and hey, all you cool cats and kittens, how are you going? That has been the greatest television experience I've had in a very, very long time. I heard you and Joel talking about it the other day. The old
Tiger King.
Mate, have you finished it?
Yeah. Like I said to Joel the other day, I was joking, obviously, but Shakespeare said, "Jesters oft prove prophets." Thank you, Macbeth. I was really keen to see the last one. I was thinking about it before I spoke to Joel, and watched it that night. So, it's that happens occasionally. Like it was like what's the name of the guy? The murder case in Manitowoc County, To Catch a Killer or whatever it was. And another Netflix, series from 2 or 3 years ago, and they seem to be very good at these series that are. That's annoying me. I've forgotten the name of that thing now. Manitowoc County.
To Catch a Killer. That sounds right.
Is that what it is?
I think. And there's also that one with the football player who killed.
Yes,
that guy.
they seem to be very. They seem to be very good at. We have a very interesting documentary here, but we can't fit it into 90 minutes, 2 hours. So let's just make it 10 and put it across 7 episodes. So that caught the world. Yeah.
But Tiger King's the only one that I've watched that was 4 episodes long. Every second was fascinating. Those people are weird. They packed in so much. I couldn't believe. When you think about that, a couple of things, there's always something else. Oh, I remember that thing. Oh, I remember that thing. Oh, I remember that thing. The person I felt the most sorry for was that documentary maker, the reality TV maker who lost everything in that fire. That was tragic because we can kind of relate to that, right? That was a hard watch, man. That was, mate.
Well, what's the lesson, dude? The lesson is back up your shit.
That was weird. I thought, how strange that he didn't back up his stuff, but it's, I don't know. I guess he thought it was safe, I guess. Classic mistake.
It's a really interesting time because people are looking for stuff, for content. And I think that's also one of the reasons that myself, I don't know if it's the same for you in your podcasting world, but some of us are finding almost having to turn people away at the moment because we're creating and providing content and giving people stuff to watch and feel as well. But the other thing is, and you might have experienced it if you watch much of my chat with Joel, is you have these really interesting things to talk about, and you want to say, oh, here's a really good thing to watch, but you also don't want to be the spoiler. So, I watched I talked to Joel about the Dave Chappelle, the Mark Twain Award, and I'd seen some of the clips on YouTube, and then just in the last week, they'd uploaded the whole Mark Twain Award, the Dave Chappelle one, to Netflix.
I saw a thumbnail for it, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched it last night, and it's freaking awesome. It is so good. And the only thing that I'm a bit disappointed about is even though I'm not really, I'm just thinking how would I enjoy it more, is that they have edited down. It's probably a 3 hour ceremony, who knows, or an
Yeah,
hour and a
yeah,
half ceremony. So they've
yeah,
taken the best of the speeches and they've edited them down. I guess because, I mean, you know
yeah,
what it's like when you're a performer or you want to be in front of people. I wouldn't have mind seeing the whole speeches. Even if
yeah,
they pulled out the best 40%, I still wouldn't have minded seeing how the whole thing had gone. But
yeah,
just the people on that are phenomenally funny.
yeah,
And Dave Chappelle is. They call him the GOAT constantly, and I think, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe he is the greatest, and his brain and the way he looks at the
yeah.
world is very different. I heard two comedians talking about him the other day, saying that he's the only comedian, Dave Chappelle,
Mm,
because normally it's like, tell a joke here, and then somehow connect the two. And
mm.
they said he's the only comedian that in this connecting time, which is really just a tool to get from joke A to joke B, he still doesn't lose you. Like a lot of
Yeah,
people, a lot of
he holds your own.
comedians they'll lose people in the transition. In the
Yeah,
transition, he's good enough that he keeps you as well. That's how good he is.
yeah. Have you seen that latest special that he did? I can't remember the name of it, but it was
Sticks
already
and Stones.
controversial because the Sticks and Stones. Gee, it was so good.
Yeah.
The world. Actually, that's another thing with this COVID thing. But the world was getting so politically correct and so woke and it was becoming very, very negative. It was woke to an absolute fault. And then he comes along with that, and it was just, we can laugh at this again. We are allowed to take the piss out of one another.
Of course.
And it was so good. I felt like it was something the world needed to see. And no matter how much people tried to put it down, there was 10 people trying to pick it back up again. And I thought it was really, really, really good. There was a couple of at the beginning when he's talking about what's the chef's name who took his life?
Yeah, I know who you mean.
You know the one.
Yeah.
When he started going on about that, I was like, "Whoa, bro, where are you going with this?" But it wasn't too bad. And then the rest of it, that sort of sets you up for the rest of the evening. It was so good.
Well,
Good.
what comedians are doing at the moment, especially in the States, I listen and interact with a lot of them. Well, listen, not interact as in they know them, but listen to a lot of them and listen to a lot of their podcasts. As a lot of them are taking their closing bit, which is normally their strongest bit to leave you on a high, and they're making it their opening bit. So they're basically fucking themselves by making their strongest bit their opening, and then they have to follow that up. And that's why there's a lot of really strong, comedic sets coming out at the moment. Well, that's what they're saying. That's not my expertise coming out, but that's what they're saying. Dave Chappelle is really interesting as well. That Sticks and Stones. So when they opened it up on Rotten Tomatoes, they had like a half dozen reviewers review it first, and it was like 1%. It was like a 1% review. And then after that, it gets opened up to the public, 99%. And I sometimes, like, I do look at Rotten Tomatoes when I'm looking at movies that I don't know. And sometimes the best ones are the ones that have a high audience and a high, reviewer critique score. But I don't take into account those sort of professional reviewers because, especially with that kind of thing, there's a bit of an agenda. And I wonder as well, in the real world, like I'm pretty sure, someone can fact check me on this, that's fine, but I'm pretty sure Dave Chappelle has won the last 3 years Grammys for comedy album in a row. So it seems like the world, the public, and maybe even the industry likes what he's doing, but there is a sector of society that makes a lot of noise that says we shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, well.
And a lot of those reviewers, they're feeling that. And they think, well, if I don't review this in a negative light, I'm not going to get printed, I'm not going to get published. So they've got to try and stay on that whole woke sort of hard left ideology that a lot of things seem to be we're heading in. And I don't think, hopefully something that comes out of this COVID-19 is this, can we just relax, just chill out. It doesn't matter what pronoun you want to be called anymore. Let's just be cool. We're all one big happy family now. Let's get along. And I'm hoping that it makes us all think about what actually matters. There was for a long time people were saying the only trouble with millennials is we don't have a world war to come off the back of to teach you, some character. But hopefully something like this does teach us all a little bit of character and, makes us all realize that. Makes people realize that we're not all here to pick on one another and yell at each other and put everybody down. We should be picking each other up and helping each other and making sure we're okay. And interesting. It should be a good reset, hopefully.
Well, I hope so. But then again, this is not the latest news, but of recent. I mean, it feels like every day is about a week at the moment. So I'm saying like 2 days ago, it feels like last month. It kind of feels the same. But within the last few days, they were saying in New Zealand, the 20 to 29-year-olds were the people who are catching this thing most of all. And I can remember hearing Jacinda basically telling off the millennials saying, it's time to suck this up and become a part of the community and basically do what you're told. And I think that's one of the things that I was saying earlier about New York and about America that doesn't work because, you say the government says to an American, do what you're told, and they go, I know my rights. I'm an American. I'm free. My God-given right for freedom. You can't tell me what to do. And it's like I think that's probably working against them in this moment because there does need to be an element of maybe not quite subservience. That's a horrible word, but maybe obedience. I mean,
communism's a good word.
I mean, obedience sounds so horrible as well because you think of that obey me kind of thing, the Stalinist sort of version of it. But maybe we have to do what we're told for a month for the greater good for the country for the rest of our lives. That doesn't seem like such a big payoff.
Or
hardship,
no, totally agree. Yeah, I think we talk about people being able to govern themselves in a lot of old cultures like the Germans, the Dutch, and a lot of those sort of Germanic. I speak of these places because I've been there frequently. But you think of those places, and they tend to govern themselves, and they create these rules, and they bend them a little bit, but within reason. Whereas you're right, America, they've got it's all about the rights. What's my rights? But they don't talk about what is my responsibility. Yeah, and that is something that we all should be looking at now. It's like, we've got rights, but we've also got responsibilities, and we need to come out of this knowing that those responsibilities are stronger than what our rights pretty much should be, hopefully.
I was speaking to an English comedian, Simon Kane. It was the first one that I did on Zoom a week and a half ago. And I kind of said, am I afforded a quarter of a second to have a bit of a giggle that Boris Johnson's got COVID-19 because a week and a half before that, he was like all bluster. I was at a hospital and there was COVID patients there and I shook everybody's hand. But now it's fuck, he's in intensive care. And I'm thinking, geez, I mean, I feel bad for even that quarter of a second sort of, you silly old prick, because if he dies or whatever, it's just, Prince Charles, Idris Elba, Tom Hanks. This is there is just no rhyme nor reason. And we're now also hearing, obviously not statistically high, but UK, a 5-year-old kid died, a 13-year-old died, that there are people from this. And so on that level, when you talk about they haven't had their war, maybe on a smaller scale, that 13-year-old, his whole school has been, I don't know if it's a guy actually, his or her whole school has been impacted by this invisible invader. So
I got a little bit annoyed because online, obviously, Boris Johnson's compared to Trump and all that sort of stuff. I don't think there's any comparison. I think Boris Johnson's phenomenally more intelligent than Trump.
Agreed.
But the when he did get sick and he gets sent to hospital, you see people online on Facebook because they're fucking morons going, "Oh, I hope he dies and I hope he croaks and all that sort of shit." You shouldn't wish that on anyone.
No,
that's one of the problems. It's like we all think differently, and no matter what happens, we should all wish for everyone to come out of this, and we can maybe, instead of throwing sound bites at one another, have conversations and talk about things. That's kind of what the mantra is for podcasting. And but that whole thing with somebody actually wishing that he would just croak and it would be a laugh, I was like, no, you're a dick. I mean, you're less of a human. Don't ever lower yourself to that standard.
I think the idea of empathy, and I love that Jacinda's constantly saying be kind to one another. I have this memory that it's always with me. I was in my 20s. I was at Eden Park watching the rugby. Well, maybe it was the cricket. Rugby. Anyway, we're watching a sporting event, probably the rugby. I was with a mate of mine who was an opera singer. That was his vocation.
Right.
I think he was still studying at the time, but it was to go on to be an opera singer. And Mike King was doing something with the crowd, and he was walking past in the dead ball area. And my mate next to me was screaming at him, "You're not funny, get out of here." And this is, an educated guy who would you think is, classy opera singer. And I don't know if he quite said, "Get the fuck out of here, you're useless." And I just had this thought, if Mike King came along to an opera, and stood up in the third row and he went, "You can't sing." You know what I mean? It's like, unless everyone would think that's an abysmal. You should never do that. And I just think it's not until you put yourself in someone else's shoes, or imagine, is it the second law of thermodynamics? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Imagine the equal and opposite reaction back on you. I mean, like Boris Johnson, I hope he dies. Oh, what if it was your nana? Oh, no. Well, hang on. Do you know? It's like...
Karma's a bitch too, man. When I believe in karma to a degree, and I think, I mean, I hope this person who wrote that doesn't get coronavirus. Maybe, I don't know, something else. But, karma can be a bitch. You talk negatively, you put people down. I mean, that's going to say a lot about you, and you're probably someone who stresses out a lot because you think too much about Boris Johnson, and, it'll take you. Yeah. It'll take you. No, it's strange times, man. I hope we all, I think we will. It'll take a while. There's going to be no international travel for a while. And I think we live in New Zealand. This is the country people want to be in. Yeah. So we should be actually looking at that and enjoying that. Yeah. Thinking, fuck Queenstown.
And everyone else can fuck off.
Everyone else just go away.
I hope like Air New Zealand, and I really... Right when this whole thing started, I kind of said, all right, this is time to buy back Air New Zealand, because under National selling 49% of Air New Zealand, now all those investors are just being propped up by the government. That doesn't seem right to me. But the flip side is we can't let Air New Zealand go bankrupt. We need an airline. So I hope once we go down to level 2 or level 1 or whatever it's going to be, Air New Zealand comes out with an advertising campaign, can't do Queensland, try Queenstown. Can't do France, try Whakatane. And it's like... Just you can't see the Duke of Wellington, see Wellington, whatever it is. And that people who want a holiday and spend money on that sort of stuff, use it. It's that classic. It's a classic. I mean, like, I grew up in Auckland. I'm not an Auckland hater. I've spent the first 40 years of my life there, basically, other than 18 months out of there, or 2 years out of there in other places. But it is a very much Auckland thing that they've never been to the South Island, but they've been to Paris. That's very prevalent amongst a lot of people in the top half of the North Island. And, Paris is beautiful, and I would suggest everyone should go there. But fuck, so's Franz Josef Glacier, mate. Come check it out.
Yeah. While it's still there.
Yeah, while it's still there. That's the other thing that's going to be... I mean, you used the word... don't know if you used the word, but you kind of talked about the good things to come from coronavirus. We've been talking on the podcast about sort of happy byproducts. Because thinking about positives out of a horrible thing is like, so the good things to come out of Nazi Germany is the the Porsche, because it's like, I wonder if we've been talking about this about the byproduct. Talk about Franz Josef Glacier, the byproduct with the environment and what's going to happen even after a month or two of sort of world lockdown. What the physical world, the terra firma, the earth and the water is going to actually look like. I'm fascinated to find that out.
Well, they were talking about, the world's only got 2 years left of it and da-da-da-da-da-da. Now that coronavirus has happened, maybe we've stretched it out to 10 or 20 years.
Maybe.
Maybe we've got a lot more time to work on the environment and work on new things and find new ways of fixing stuff, because we should all be working for the people. We should be working for the betterment of the people and the land and the environment that we have, because it's not going to be there forever. Because now we can see, we've actually seen what can happen if we just back the fuck away and let nature do its thing.
But wouldn't that be a prick? It's like, I really get fucked off with companies. I'm a bit of a dick when it comes to negotiating when I'm purchasing things. I find it a fantastic game. I love doing it. And so I'll go to 3 companies who are selling the same product and play them off against each other. And they'll go, well, we can match their price. And I go, well, that doesn't help me. You need to beat the price. Matching their price does nothing for me. It does something for you, but it does nothing for me. Can you beat it? And they go like, whatever, $77 is my lowest number. And I don't know, whatever it will be. And I went, okay, so if I offered you $76.50, you wouldn't take it. They go, no, we'd take $76.50. Okay, well, 77 is not your lowest number. What's your best price? And I do this thing over and over again. And one of the things that fucks me off more than anything is when businesses drop their pants quickly. It's like, if I say no to something and all of a sudden they come back to me with a $300 discount on whatever it was. Like, I've got an in-ceiling ventilation system. And they were terrible. That really made me so angry that I got a quote from 2 or 3 of them. And then one of the companies came back and they locked like $600 off the price. And I'm like, why didn't you just offer me that price? Yes. Why did you try and route me? Why did you try and fuck me over when you could have made money at a different price? And I kind of feel a bit the same about if we come out of literally, let's say, a 6-week lockdown and the Earth has been given 10 years of its life back, I'm like, fuck, is this all it takes? Because on the grand scheme of things, a month of giving up your life for, exponential benefits to the planet, that doesn't seem like a big ask. So maybe the reality is it wouldn't be that hard to meet somewhere in the middle, where we don't have to lock ourselves in our bedrooms, but we also don't have to rape the planet into non-existence.
Yes. No, I totally agree. I think there is a lot of, what's the word, compromise that's going to have to come out of this. Everyone's got a comparable left versus the right, all this sort of thing, and businesses versus big business versus small business. I mean, you see places like Countdown and all that sort of stuff must be a roaring trade at the moment, but what about the little man? What about the little butcher and all that? I'm going to make efforts to go to my local butchery, efforts to go to smaller places, because I want to see those people thrive again. I just found out that our neighbor across the road has a restaurant which has been closed for a couple of weeks, Indian fellow, and that's the first place we're going to go when eventually we get out of here once he's opened up again. You've got to, there's a lot of communication and a lot of we're able to work for everybody, and everyone can give and take. And what you're saying, one thing that you were saying before about people are able to actually drop a lot more than they really say they can, is that I think that in New Zealand we sort of shit on our own backyard when it comes to prices of produce, when it comes to prices of a lot of things. We produce a lot of our own produce, and we can see now that we don't necessarily need to import much of anything. There's no reason for things to cost the way that they do. I'm tired of British people coming over here and telling us that their produce is better and far cheaper.
Well, hang on, but worse than that, for not to interrupt you, but fucking getting Fonterra products cheaper and better in the UK than we get them when you live 40 k's away from the fucking factory. That's the thing that irks me.
Yeah, right? It's nuts. And no, that's been something that's been bugging me. Excuse me. That's something that's been bugging me.
If I had $1 for every time Fonterra buggered me, mate, I'd be...
Oh, mate, I'd be wealthy. No, but yeah, we need to. This is what we need to look at our community now. Like, community has been a word that has been something that we've sort of lost over the last 20, 30 years because of expansion, technology, and the ability to fly cheaply everywhere and communicate easily now cheaply. We've lost community. We there's a time now where we just don't really know our neighbors' names or what our neighbors even look like, and because of this I actually do now, within a 2-meter distance, but that's a lot more than I did before. And we need to actually help locally and talk to each other and realize that we don't have to go to fucking France to holiday. We can go to New Zealand. I would go as far as the islands because they need some help, but we can work together and communicate and build that community back up again and help one another and thrive. And wouldn't it be neat if it came out of something as silly as this?
It seems also what you're saying makes it even more problematic when I read headlines. Like, I went to and I'll say Pack and Save. I went to Pack and Save kind of 2 days before the lockdown, and I came away from it and I said to a couple of people, it feels like the prices are a little bit more expensive than they normally are. Like you'd buy a kilo mince tray and it would normally be $13, $14, and it was like $16. And it just felt like they were a little bit more expensive than they normally are. Now, I don't know anything is going on, but then then a week after that, I'm hearing reports about the government doing an inquiry into prices of foods and stuff. And I heard selling cauliflowers up to $13.99 each. Now, one of my clients is a vegetable and fruit supplier, right? So I know that growers are dropping their pants at the moment. I know that, I mean, we saw it on the news the other night. There was a dude who had to mow over $40,000 worth of lilies because he couldn't take.
That was tragic. I saw that.
But now multiply that by an apple orchard, and I know that there are growers across the whole country who are dropping their pants and getting prices out there. So to see the price gouging in that, and I know if there has been some gouging, has been disgusting and repugnant, because to your point of we are an agricultural and a tourism country. Now, tourism's going to take a back seat for a while. Maybe maybe a part of our shutting up shop. Maybe we don't need those Californian oranges, but we can have those Central Otago peaches through the whole country. You know what I mean? It's like maybe we're not going to have bananas because we don't do bananas in New Zealand, but maybe we're going to finally get export quality kumara or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, obviously we're a dairy country and we're a beef and we're a sheep country. So yeah, we're set up to be like the biggest small village in the world if we wanted to be.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that made New Zealand boom after the war, was the fact that we were the world's kitchen for a while there. You know what I mean? And we sort of lost sight of that, I think. We almost started sending things to the world so much that we lost sight of actually what was in front of us. I was saying before, we stopped. Why are we importing anything that we can produce here?
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me because it's just not as good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the first time I went to the States and I went to McDonald's, I do the Big Mac challenge. Every time I go to another country, like I used to do that before I, got fit. Anyway, I'd go to every country I'd go to. It was like, I'd always try a Big Mac to see what it tastes like. The worst tasting Big Mac, America.
Really?
It's gross. Gross. The meat has no flavor. It was like eating cardboard. It was bizarre.
Where was the best?
New Zealand. The best has always been New Zealand.
Really?
Like, still is.
Do you reckon it actually is the best, or that's just your taste buds because you're used to it?
It was the most flavorful. I could taste the meat through the condiments. Oh. You know what I mean? The next Aussie was similar. Aussie was also quite good, but the worst by far was America.
And the funny thing about that is the whole premise of McDonald's is, our customers can go anywhere in the world and it tastes the same. So isn't that ironic?
That is ironic. That is funny.
Kind of like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. Almost.
I love how that song's not actually ironic.
No, not at all. It's a simile.
It's not ironic. It's just unfortunate events, mate. Never mind. Rain on your wedding day. It's not ironic. It's just a bummer. Never mind. What's next for you on Netflix? What's keeping you entertained next? Anything like that?
I am going to watch a bunch of movies. I have a couple of internet portals where I watch things occasionally. I watched one the other night called The Invisible Man, which was really good. Yeah, new one, like it was from last year.
Elizabeth Moss? Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good. I unfortunately read a bit too much about it, so some of the twists and turns didn't quite catch me like they should. Yeah. But really good. Some of my most, of my top 5 movies, probably 3 of them are movies, and they were all at the Rialto in Newmarket, that I walked into knowing nothing about. And they became top 3 of my top 5. And they were like Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile were 2 of them. So you got to kind of put those up there anyway. Knew nothing about them when I walked in. And my favorite movie they always reference, that I always come back to, was What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And went into that having knew nothing about it. So I think if I had have known nothing about The Invisible Man, I probably would have enjoyed it a bit more. But it was good. So if people want to see that, and that was, we were just talking about Rotten Tomatoes. The reason I mentioned that is because we were going through Rotten Tomatoes. There was like a half dozen movies that are all from 2020 or 2019 on this portal, and I was like, and several of them had quite good ratings, both critically and audience wise. One of them was a new Bad Boys for Life. Haven't seen that yet. Want to check that out?
Yeah, haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I just finished watching Uncut Gems last night with Adam Sandler on Netflix.
Did you split that when you watched it, or did you watch it all the way through?
I split it actually. I only circumstantially, not by choice. Like it was got too late one night, so we stopped.
Yeah.
But
I split it because it was too intense. I was like, oh man, I'm just not in the mood for this right now. It's amazing.
It is.
I've still got to finish it.
It is one of those movies where you kind of go, I'm feeling a bit nervous for this character right now. As we were watching it, we were talking, and I'm just like, people live like this. People live, money here, money there, kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I haven't got your money, I'll get it off this person. Hey, where's my money? I've got to pay that person. And I'm just like, fuck, man, it certainly heightens the stress level. Yeah. But, I love Adam Sandler's stupid, silly movies. Like I like Waterboy, I like Billy Madison, I like those Happy Gilmores, I even like Grown Ups, but to see him in that role was also really cool. It was a really cool role.
Yeah. He does have the dramatic chops. What was it, that movie he did? There was one dramatic film he did back in the early O's. Shit.
It wasn't the
I'll have
one
to
with
look it
Ben
up.
Stiller. There was one that Ben Stiller wrote for him, and it was a more serious one.
Oh, it might have been that one actually.
It was more like a dark comedy, but it was. I know the one you
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah.
I
Can't remember what
can't
it
think
was.
of the title.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Ben Stiller, I watched Tropic Thunder again the other day.
I've watched it in the last couple of Netflix.
Oh my god, I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that
yeah,
film.
yeah.
It's like you're watching it now, and I'm like, you cannot do that now. You can get away with nothing of that now. And shit, it's
I
good.
wonder if you can. I mean, first it's Robert Downey Jr. He can do anything.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I people who don't know. I mean, everyone must know, but it's he's in blackface. He plays a black
yeah,
character.
yeah.
I wonder about that as a theory though, because where do you draw the line? Like, what's his name?
Acting's acting.
Jeffrey Tambor. I never watched
Yep.
I never watched the series, but he played a transgender character in
Yes.
a TV called Transparent or something like that. I never saw
Transparent.
it.
Yep.
Am I right? Okay, that was just
Yep.
off the dome, and he
Yep.
got
No, that was it. But it's
criticized.
on Amazon.
He got criticized because he wasn't transgender, and you hear about Johnny Depp getting, and this is a long time ago, but getting criticized for playing
Yeah, yeah.
Tonto or whatever the character's name was, and there's this cultural appropriation. But I wonder where that line. I wonder. It frustrates me a little bit because acting is playing make believe.
Yes.
You aren't the person anyway.
Yeah.
So changing a race or a gender or a ethnicity or a whatever as a part of taking on is that any different really from the costuming in general? These aren't my
Yeah.
clothes. This
Yeah.
isn't my facial hair. I'm wearing prosthetics.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that one. I understand the backlash to underrepresentation in films, but I'm concerned by the pendulum swinging the other way and then decisions being made that lessen the quality of the art. I can't imagine
Yeah.
an artist 200 years ago having to think about why they were doing what they were doing to fit in with society.
Yeah.
They just did it
Yeah,
because that's
exactly.
what artists do.
What's
Yeah.
her name? Who played Black Widow on Scarlett Johansson?
Yep.
Scarlett Johansson got that massive backlash because she was going to play a transgender woman. And it's like, well, why isn't there a real transgender person playing this part? Da 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 da. Da. And immediately I just thought to myself, because no one would watch it.
Maybe.
If you want to illuminate your cause or bring people into a theater to watch the story, it doesn't matter who's playing it. You put Scarlett Johansson in there, there's an instant $200 million more you're going to make and a $200 million worth of eyeballs that are going to be watching it. And you can, bring your cause to the fore. If you put a transgender person in there, you'll get a lot of transgender people watching it, a lot of LGBT community watching it, but you want people like me to go and watch a movie like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what it sounds like what you're saying is you want the message to be seen by as many eyes as possible. The movie is not an activist outlet. It's an outlet for a story. Well, I mean, just as we're talking as well, I'm thinking about my favourite film, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And for people who haven't seen it, it's like the first time you ever see Leonardo DiCaprio. I think he might have done Basketball Diaries either just before or just after. So it's either his first or second film. And he plays an intellectually handicapped 16-year-old. And he's fucking phenomenal. Like it was before he'd done really anything. And I remember seeing it and going, geez, they've taught that intellectually handicapped kid. He's done really well. And that's just how good he is. That's how good he is. And so is the line drawn there? Should you not have, intellectually challenged people playing only intellectually challenged people? Does it continue on? Are only, American women allowed to play Americans? What about all those British people that come across to America and put on American accents? Is that not cultural appropriation?
Yeah.
So,
well, some of the best American actresses I've seen so far come from Australia. So, what's her name? Oh, God.
you're thinking Wolf of Wall Street?
Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
what's
Wolf
her
of
name?
Wall Street.
She is phenomenal as an actress. Wolf of Wall Street was incredible.
Yeah.
What's her name? Anyway, I'm terrible with names right now. No, but yeah, it's exactly that. It's like, well, yeah, where does it end? It's not cultural appropriation. It's cultural appreciation, especially if you're an actor and you're creating something. It's an art form and you're appreciating what it is. If you do a bad job or you don't really try, or you're an actor and you get out there and you just do some weird cartoonish version of something, okay, you're a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Depending on the situation. But if it's an art form and you do a good job, mate, that's great. Should be doing it. And the thing about the Robert Downey Jr. one was, yeah, it was risky, and yeah, it's blackface, but the story behind why he went into blackface on the movie was genius.
Yeah,
it was like he's a bit of a what's his name, Russell Crowe. He's a bit of a Russell Crowe Australian actor. He just wants to try and do everything, and so he goes that one step too far. Anyway, it's great comedy. I love that film. Highly recommend it to anybody.
I think, and there'll be people who don't like what I say and don't agree with what I'm about to say, but I think for me, it always comes back to the best person for the XYZ job, role, position, whatever. And if you have two candidates that are equally qualified, equally good, could do equally a good job at whatever it is, that's when you bring in well, what else can we add here? What else adds to this storyline, this job? You know, I mean, if it was a man and a woman applying for a job, I don't employ people per se, but I have people working for me on the podcast. I would love to have a female technician, because a female technician would add a different perspective to what I'm doing. Yeah. But I'm still going to fall back to the person who is best qualified for the job, who has the best technical nous. That's going to be my primary objective. If I find two people where their skill sets are very similar, you know what? I'll absolutely lean towards someone who's going to bring a different perspective from me. You know, I'm an Irish origins, Pākehā Kiwi in his 40s. You know, so of course I want a different perspective from that, but it still comes back to
it's merit.
Best for the job.
Yeah, you know what you're doing, or you've got the qualifications. That's the number one, because you need to be able to trust that person. You're putting money into this person, so you've got to make sure that they can do the job. It's this whole meritocracy thing that's been going on. It's sort of drifted away a little bit now, but there was that whole hire people based on ethnicity or sex rather than their merits. You know, I think that was heading for a disaster. I think and how would you feel if you were hired because of that, not because of your actual skills? You know what I mean? If I was hired because I was a white guy rather than I was actually good at doing voice work or podcasting or whatever, I'd feel strange, weird. I'd feel like a fraud. You know, that would be following me around.
Although in saying all of that, I'm going to kind of contradict myself a little bit here now. I do support and believe in, for example, a quota system at university. So I'm completely fine with a number of positions in, let's say, the medical school being offered to set aside for Māori, for example. And one of the reasons for that, I think that it's really important to have that perspective, obviously, that life and that worldview within there. The thing that people often miss in that conversation is then those people who have been accepted under and maybe I'm butchering it, calling it a quota system, but with that being a valued part of their application, then still have to pass all the same tests, and then still have to achieve like everybody else. So it's not like they're a lesser quality person at the end of it. No. So I guess what I'm saying is the world is nuanced, and maybe my big fat head is being too blunt on one area when I can see the other side of it in another area. Maybe.
No, I can see where you're coming from, and I agree with it, because giving someone who may not get that extra foot in to get the education, to get the learnings, to get the skills, to actually earn the merit to take that job. I agree with you there. I think some people are in a less fortunate situation to actually be able to get the education to do something. So if you give them that opportunity, they may shine. Yeah. And we need to be able to look out for people like that and make sure that they all get a fair go, for sure.
Hey,
not too many. So.
You've jumped into my TARDIS. We've been going for an hour and 10 minutes already. That's what happens with this time TARDIS. I do definitely want to talk about Bachelorette, because it's like, the biggest news in the world. Before we go,
it was so, not going to be honest, bro. It's so nice to do an interview and not fucking talk about that first.
But the thing is, speaking of Dave Chappelle, it's like he does a very funny routine. If people, normally what I do if I was in my studio is I'd show people the clip I'm talking about, but I don't have my switcher here, so I'll just tell people and you can look it up. If you Google Dave Chappelle Dancing with the Stars, he has a very funny segment where he's talking about reality TV, and he goes, I'm going to butcher it, obviously, but he goes, I nearly gave up. One stage in life, I nearly gave up. It was like, I made the phone call. Hello, Dancing with the Stars. And he goes, nope, not there yet. And so he's basically, And he's basically talking about people on Dancing with the Stars who have given up. And you have a resume that's amazing,
Yep.
and your skill set and stuff. And when I heard you doing it, I'm like, oh, Daryl, why are you sure? Is this, what's in it for you, sort of thing? But then I got the twist, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
That
pretty
was
cool.
weird.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. So,
no,
so tell me about your experience, bro.
Yeah, right. So I was, I've said this to pretty much everyone else. I'm anti-reality TV. It was not something I ever wanted to be involved with. I don't even go behind the camera for reality TV. It's just, I just see it as a one-way trip down to Hades. But I got this phone call from my agent one day, and she says to me, "A job's come up. Not sure if you're going to want it. Hear me out. Do you want to be on The Bachelorette?" I said, "Fuck no," my exact words. And she says, no, not as a contestant. They want you as a contestant, but as a mole, an inside guy. And I thought, well, now's my opportunity to go in there and be the eyes and ears for people like myself and probably yourself who don't enjoy reality TV. I'm always critical of it. Now I can put my foot where my mouth is, and I can get in there and, see what it's all about in a way that I'm happy to do. So I said, all right, let me I want to have a think about it. When do they want me on? A couple of days? I'll give you an answer. She goes, no, 4:00 this afternoon. So
welcome to the TV world.
Mate, that was bizarre. So within that was at 12:00. So I had 4 hours to cancel the jobs I had that week. I was only going to be on for 8 days. Cancel the jobs I had that week, and just make my way down. Because once you're there, you've got to hand your phone in and all that because you're in isolation. And so I went down, did all that, got on the show, and there I was, and it was weird. For a start, I knew all the camera people. Almost everyone behind the camera. I was like, "Oh, hey, bro, hey, you right?" And they're all ignoring me, trying to ignore me, and they're trying to look in different directions. And it was weird. And there was a moment there on the first night. Me and the boys. There was 22 of us, I think, on that first night. We're all standing around. Art walks in. Art Green, the host of the show. He comes out and he says, "Hi guys, welcome to The Bachelorette," and da 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 da. And that was the moment where I just went, "What have I done? What? Oh shit, I'm here. I'm really doing this. This is. I'm not going to go to my own bed tonight. I'm actually going to be here." It was strange. It was weird. But so I was saying I was there for 8 days, and my job as a mole was to try and find out, who was there for nefarious reasons, who had a girlfriend on the outside world, who wasn't, blah, 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 gossipy crap. And I decided that I'm going to try and do this in a different way. I'm going to try and do it in a more psychological way. I try and break down the psychology of the guys, because that's what I was interested in. Why are these guys here? Why are they doing it? And that was something that I was able to do, and they didn't balk too much of it. To be honest, the results, the TV world had already decided the results. I was just a vehicle for getting to that result. So, but when I was on screen and when I did have my little camera and I was able to talk to the audience, I would do it in a way that I wanted to do. And that was, as I said before, it was more of a psychological sort of breakdown. And that made a lot of fun for me. I felt like I was David Attenborough. Genuinely, I thought I was like David Attenborough in a BBC doco
And
of
here,
nature, watching these men.
At the pool are the alpha males.
The young cub and his alpha males don't know what's there in store for.
Oh, and the male comes up to challenge the alpha. Can he be the top lion?
It was hilarious. It was fun. That made it fun for me. Otherwise, oh man, I would have been going crazy. And it was hard after about 5 days of being on the show, because I had no skin in the game. There was nothing for me to win.
Right.
I started getting pretty bored. I started getting frustrated with what was going on. In the end of the day, it's still reality TV. They're still manipulating everything. And it just started getting to me a little bit. But, but being able to just I actually did get to talk about that sort of thing on camera. They didn't really use any of that. I think that was a little bit too deep for them. But to be able to talk about how I was feeling and how the other guys were probably feeling, that was kind of a nice thing to do. There's always. So I was on The Bachelorette, and the year before I was behind the camera on Heartbreak Island, which is phenomenally worse. But in the last 2 years I've had a bit of experience with reality TV, and there's always two things they can make. There's enough footage. They can always make the show that they're going to make, which is going to be reality TV in the way we know it, or they could genuinely make an interesting breakdown on the human psyche and the way that mating rituals are, or the way we interact with each other on television, or the way we interact in general. There's always two shows, and I wish they would do both,
Yeah, right.
or trick everybody to getting on there and actually making something completely different. It would have been pretty cool. But that's just not the way. That's not what gets ratings.
I think reality TV, the ultimate reality TV there's ever been, it's the best it ever was There's Something About Miriam. Do you know There's Something About Miriam?
Oh my God, I heard about that. Yeah.
Where she
Turned out
was
to be a dude.
she was a male to female transitioning transgender, but was gorgeous. Miriam female. And that was, I mean, that's the ultimate surprise, the ultimate everything at the end. It was just really, it's like, yeah, interesting. I'm just thinking about could you do that today? Because would the LGBT community consider that to be taking advantage of, like, because it's
taking the piss of them.
Well, it's sort of, I guess, the end of that is, does Miriam become a bit of the butt of the joke? Like, so in other words, there's a bunch of guys who are now sort of quote unquote grossed out that they've been kissing a transgender female. I don't know. Maybe even in that, because I think that was in the aughts, the noughties. So maybe that wouldn't even happen today. I'm not sure.
The thing I find interesting about what you're saying is, I find a lot of the people who are the most offended by that are straight people who want a cause. And I find that when I talk to a lot of my LGBT community friends, they think it's hilarious.
Right.
They're like, oh, absolutely, go bitch. It's all about that. They just have a good time with it. They accept it. They know that they are flamboyantly amusing, or they know that the situation that they're in is unusual, and they do see the humor in it. But I think it's a lot of good intended straight people who quite often get the most up in arms about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I wonder about I mean, I don't think it is necessary. It's not good to have, a bunch of sort of, bros at the end of a show kind of throwing up in the bushes because they've interacted with this human being who they didn't realize
is that what happened?
Their full story.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants that? No, I don't want to see that.
No,
I don't want to,
because
that feels really disrespectful and horrible towards, that's a human being,
Yeah.
No,
that's a good point, actually. I mean, without seeing it.
But I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, but that was like, I think they actually pulled that show. That was ultimate train wreck, because then all the guys sued the company because of, misinformation, and it was crazy.
No shit.
So how how many episodes did you stay in for?
I was on for 2 solid weeks, so that was 7 episodes. There was 4 on the first week and 3 on the second week.
And you
then I came back.
You were the doctor's spy, is that right?
Yes, I was the doctor's spy. Yeah.
And so what's she like? She didn't pick anyone in the end, did she?
No. She was lovely. She was cool. But something that we all realized, and it's all there on the show, is that I think she was a little bit out of her league toward the end. She didn't know how to handle that situation. She thought, she's beautiful, she's intelligent, she's a popular person. I think this was just going to be a walk in the park. She's done some acting. She's been in front of cameras before. She thought this was going to be a nice little boost, and it won't be too emotionally hard and all that. She didn't count on the fact that guys actually are going to fall for you.
Wow.
Guys actually are going to challenge you. Because I think she's one of these people who, again, is so beautiful, she hasn't been challenged. Guys just go goo. But there was a couple of guys on who actually challenged her in the way that she thought, and challenged her into her reasons for being on the show. So I wasn't there when all that went down. They were in Argentina. But that was sort of where it went for her. But she was a lovely girl, but in the end, I think just a little bit out of her depth. And if you watch the very last episode, which was a reunion show where we all came back and we all talked about what it was like being on the show. Mm-hmm. She again got challenged by 2 of the guys in particular who really fell for her on the show, and it was pretty awkward. There was a lot of, I can't even say they were edited. They were genuinely that long awkward silences between everybody on stage, and they kept that in the show, in the actual episode. So yeah, she was a lovely girl, and I don't think she made the right choice in coming on the show. Right. Lily, on the other hand, number 2, she was born for it. She loves this stuff. She laps that shit up. and she found genuine love. I mean, her and Richie Boyens, I think is his name. Richie, magic couple. You knew from the first time they met each other on the show, weeks before it ended, that this is their sparks there. Everyone else was they're just filling in the space really until the end of the series. But no, they have connected really well, and when they're together, they're brilliant. They're really, really good. So, but she's also, again, she was someone who's made for reality TV. This is her third or fourth series of reality in form or another, and she just knows her way around it, and she knew how to work it, and how to play the game. So she was really, really good. Did you see what they did the other day? They took an Instagram photo of themselves in a supermarket. Couple of things there. One, you're not supposed to be in a supermarket as a couple. You're supposed to be there, one person per household. And the other thing was they picked up a carton of orange juice called Golden Pash, and they thought it would be funny to pretend they were licking it. And it's like, we're in a virus pandemic, and you're pretending to lick something, you fucking retards. Anyway, I saw it. I was cracking up. I had a good laugh. Bless him.
But still, biggest loser of the month has been that bald guy from Christchurch who thought he'd go through the supermarket sneezing at people, being brought up on charges.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad he got nailed, eh?
Yeah.
What a dick. What a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he's been not taken advantage of. They've used him as an example. Needed to happen.
Although he has been evicted, and I wonder how that legally can pan out. But who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
He's
already got too much airtime.
Learn the lesson. Hey, dude, it's been a blast having a chat with you.
Yeah, man. You too. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
What a wonderful way to fill in an hour and a half of quarantine.
If people want to find out more about you, about your podcast, and about other stuff that you're doing, what's the website? Give out the deets.
Yeah, so if you want to go to one place to find all my stuff, it's www.darylhabraken.com, DarylHabraken.com, or Daryl Habraken on Instagram, and obviously Daryl Habraken on Facebook. There aren't any other Daryl Habrakens out there, I can guarantee you.
Really? With the one R. Is Daryl sometimes two R's?
One R. Daryl is sometimes two R's, and EL, and all sorts of weird spellings. But no, yeah, DARYL. Yeah, man.
Hey, it's been good fun, and I've been saying to everyone, depending on how long this lags on for, let's do it again sometime soon.
For sure, would love to. Be great. And I'll get you on mine. How's that? Let's try that out. I'll get the Zoom thing working.
Bloody marvelous.
And I'll get you on mine. That'd be good.
All right.
Wicked. Thanks, Pat.